Bear on Bears fan, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. We got Courtney Cronin here a day early because we needed to hear the inside scoop on everything rookie minicamp. Got to figure out what's going on with Caleb. Hearing a lot of really good glowing things. What's going on with Rome Odunze. Some of the rookies that we signed that actually are going to make this roster. Talking about all that and more in today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave that 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Courtney, we're back on the grind.
We are, and it was, an eventful 2 days out there. Obviously, rookie minicamp is like it's what ends the drought, our footballless drought for a couple of months. But there was, I think someone counted 50 media members, photographers, whatever, in the media room on Friday to hear from Matt Eberflus, Caleb Williams, and Rome Odunze. I have never covered a rookie camp that has that much intrigue, but it was, kept me busy on Friday. All the ESPN shows want to talk about what's going on with the Bears and with Caleb Williams. And this is nothing new for us, Pat. I mean, this is the offseason that has Chicago at the center of the NFL world. And now that you're starting to see Caleb Williams, what he looks like in Bears gear when he's out in the field, what the ball looks like coming out of his hands, it's only the beginning of what's going to be an even more eventful offseason when the entire squad gets together for OTAs next week.
Hey, you've been going. You've had double duty. You were out there doing NFL Live, doing a great job. Clap it up for Courtney Cronin in the comments.
It was fun. I had a good time.
You dominated out there. Thought you handled the show, had everybody in the right spots. Everything was good. I was like, okay, she's gonna be on TV, so we got. She's got a future in this thing. No, I'm kidding. You did a great job. We enjoyed watching you and got some great insight from that as well. But now having you back here, let's start here. Let's start with the elephant in the room that everybody wants to know. The report around Caleb is that basically day one and kind of into day two as well, about 15-ish minutes of just perfectly placed footballs, as we've heard. Was Caleb Williams as impressive as everyone has reported and said?
What impressed me the most, and I know we have to kind of temper the expectations, what can you actually take away from a rookie minicamp? These guys are in shorts. They're 5 draft picks. The rest of the roster is all undrafted free agents. Yes, they signed 6 players today that are, we're college tryout guys. So, what their roles become, we're not talking about that right now because it's way too soon. And the majority of this roster will never play with Caleb Williams, but to watch the command and to watch how the ball came out of his hand, because I was curious. I was like, all right, what does it look like compared to what we've seen the last 2 years and what I've seen the last 2 years in Chicago covering Justin Fields? And you don't want to compare them side by side, but there was just a way that when the ball comes off of Caleb Williams' hands, he almost does this thing like Rodgers where he kind of flicks it.
Don't tell
I know that.
I'm
sorry, but it was one thing I noticed when we could actually see the offense close to the where we were standing, because they're doing 11 on 11 and 7 on 7 on the far field. It is a little bit harder to get that vantage point, even if you do have binoculars. But the biggest takeaway I had was just seeing the ball come off his hands, and of course, when he's throwing to Keenan Allen in a week, to DJ Moore, to Rome Odunze, when I would imagine Rome would be back out there. The whole hamstring tightness thing sounded like more of a precautionary thing than something they were seriously concerned about. Okay. That's when you can start to tell, okay, what does the chemistry look like? What stage of it are they at? And how does it look when Caleb throws a pass to who very well could be his number one target? But until then, it's the fundamentals, which sounds so cliche, but how fast are they getting in and out of the huddle? That was something I was trying to track early on in these practices. Okay, are guys lined up in the right spots? Is Caleb having to make sure that, and I expected, a lot of mistakes because this is day one. And even he said that he thought it wasn't going to be perfect, but to get those mistakes corrected quickly was the goal. So I think it was about they accomplished what they wanted to. I don't know if you can give it a grade or if you can really take away how much further along is he since he's had all this extra time to learn the fundamentals of this offense. What I can tell you is that the coaches were really impressed, and Kerry Joseph was really impressed, his quarterback's coach, with how much Caleb already knows about what this offense is, but also like the questions that he has. He was texting him the other night at 10:30 p.m., I think on Thursday night, of like, why did we run it this way? What is this, what is this run play? Why do we do? He wants to know the why behind it, which for somebody who's just learning this offense, he's already trying to figure out the X's and O's behind something working, which, it's another level. It's a higher level of thinking for somebody who already has a ton on his plate.
Yeah, and that's literally where I was going to go, right? Like the fact that you hear from Coach Joseph and he says, that his quarterback's coach that he works with personally, he did a great job prepping him for what we're about to do. Said coming into minicamp, he was light years ahead of the information that he already had. Did you kind of get that feel that him being prepared, him being ready to go, elevated kind of the play of everybody at rookie minicamp? Because that was one of the questions that we had coming into the season last year of how unprepared the Bears looked playing against the Packers, how unprepared they looked to start the season. Hearing that Caleb Williams is already well prepared for everything that he's coming into, at least at this point, right? There's training camp. There's a lot more that has to come, but that he's prepared at this point. That gives me a little bit of confidence that he's going to raise the bar of everybody else around him.
And I think that it had to be a perfect circumstance in order for their process to play out this way, where really for the last 6 weeks, he's been working on the fundamentals of the Bears offense. Now, what is that exactly? So I asked Flus about this the other day because I was curious, because there have been like some weird, it's not like they like gave their playbook to his private quarterbacks coach and said, here, like, go work on this with him. That's not how it worked. And
it's called tampering.
That would never happen. But like the backstory here. So Will Hewlett, who has been working with Caleb since he was in 7th grade, already had a prior existing relationship with Shane Waldron. He's, been part of the QB collective group where NFL coaches and coaches who are training players at the high school level and at the college level get a chance to like intermingle during these like training sessions, these combines effectively. And those two have he knows Shane Waldron's offense. He worked with Anthony Richardson last year. He worked with Brock Purdy the year before at his training at Cortex, which is his training facility down in, I think it's Ponte Vedra, Florida, so near Jacksonville. And they've done this before, but never to the point where it's obvious at this point, like early April, the Bears are taking Caleb Williams. It's obvious that Caleb Williams is going to Chicago. With Anthony Richardson, they weren't sure. The Panthers might have been in play there. Like there was still kind of that uncertainty of where you're going. When there was no uncertainty with Caleb Williams, that allowed them to say, okay, let's just not waste any more time. Let's get into it. So that's the cadence. That's operating in and out of the huddle, that's drops, that's route depths for different, for receivers and what the route tree looks like for the Bears. That's, terminology and verbiage, like things that often take a really long time to learn. He got a 6-ish week head start on it, which is great because that then allows Shane Waldron. Obviously, he's going to be in teaching mode, but he'll be able to get to the X's and O's quicker. That's the goal throughout all of this and the way that they approach the situation. And I think it really speaks to the Bears' process of how they went about this in a way that is going to set Caleb up for success. He's already gotten a head start where look around the league at the other quarterbacks. What do we hear out of Washington the other day? That Jayden Daniels is a stud. Okay, well, do you know much about him and his ability to operate this stuff yet? No, not really. What did we hear about Drake May? That he's got a lot to work on. And that's not to say Caleb doesn't, but his situation and the opportunity the Bears took to take advantage of the time that they had, all right, we've got a 6-week head start. Let's start teaching you the fundamentals. What harm would it have been? There's no harm in doing that. He was training anyway, so you might as well start learning what's going to be required of you. So everything's not brand new when you get here for rookie minicamp. Yeah,
and the fact that he's ready to go, that he's taking in this information, and I think it yes, he's had a 6-week head start, but it can't be overlooked that he took advantage of it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like that, how many young guys at 22 years old can you say, yeah, I've got this information. We've sent this out. We've seen this throughout NFL history where, they still come in and it's still like, all right, I guess I still got a lot to learn. I'm still a little bit behind the 8 ball. There's even hearing Caleb talk after, right? Like him saying there's going to be some misses. I'm going to mess some things up. Sounded
very
like
self-aware. For somebody who said that he wasn't going to come in here expecting not to be great, like he told us that during the day after he was drafted, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a polished product the second you get on the field. And I liked that he was so, willing to admit, yeah, I might have a couple mess ups. I expect that. And there were times. I mean, there was a time I believe he threw an interception during team period on Saturday. It was hard to tell exactly what the read was and what happened, but those are moments that you're going to expect because he is a rookie quarterback. It's not going to be a polished product right away. It shouldn't be. Like, there's just no realistic expectation that was going to be the case, but he is further along in not having to take baby steps now, considering he's already had the crash course before he even got to seeing what the playbook looks like and what's expected of him when he's on the field with the Bears.
Yeah, he's putting himself in a great position to really hit the ground running. Very excited to see how much more he's going to be able to learn and take advantage of by the time we actually get to mini camp and then, of course, training camp. Let's take a look at our other top 10 pick, though. So much has been focused on Caleb Williams. When you got to see Rome out there, what did Rome look like on the field working with Caleb?
So he only practiced on Friday, and I know people were a little worried, like when it comes out on Saturday, that he's got hamstring tightness. I'll tell you, like on Saturday, I kind of wondered about it because he didn't stretch. He was off to the side with the trainer, I believe. And then, he's out on the field. He had receiver gloves on, and they were just kind of like, a couple passes would come his way, like nothing serious. He wasn't running routes. He wasn't like, disobeying the orders from the trainers to not practice, but he was moving around. And there was a time where it was like more individual work for the quarterbacks and the receivers were off working, with Chris Beatty and like doing individuals themselves. But Rome was with Caleb, just the two quarterbacks that were there and then Rome. Like, it was not a situation where this guy was on ice, which I think is a good thing. Like, it's just calm down, everybody. He's fine. It's not going to be the end of the world that he sat out a day of practice in May. So, but other than that, I thought it was kind of funny when the Bears put that video out on Friday where it was, like, get used to seeing this a lot. And it was a screen pass to start out.
I know.
What did Matt Eberflus say during the draft when he's talking about kind of giving clues to like what they felt about, DJ Moore is incredible. And don't get me wrong. Like he carried this offense last year. A lot of those passes were to him. A lot of those 60-yard receptions were a 5-yard dump off. And then DJ takes it the rest of the way to the house. I think they want to avoid that as much as they can, or at least not make that the bread and the butter of this year's Bears offense. So why are you showing that as like the first play on a social clip when there's so many more there's going to be so many more highlight reel worthy plays. And, there were some other ones in there too, but like that connection is one now. Like, remember we were talking about it with Fields and DJ last year, like from the very jump of OTAs, this is the one that you lock into and like, all right, like how much does it grow from end of May all the way through the time that they're finishing it up in June? He's got 3 of those guys he's got to establish it with, beginning with Rome. And I asked Rome, and like I said, like, we know that you guys worked out together prior to the draft. Did you do any work? They've been out going to the Sky game and going to the Cubs game and all those things and getting acclimated here. They also have been throwing a little bit before they got to rookie minicamp, which that's good. Like it shows like a work ethic, at least. Like at the very minimum, you have 2 guys who are locked in who want to have a pretty quick success in the NFL. So they're trying to get trying to get on that page with each other as quickly as possible. So I'll be really curious to see what their growth is tethered to each other. Their whole development in the NFL is going to be, dependent upon one another. And I think they both appreciate that because that takes probably some of the pressure off of like just having to be like, oh, I'm the rookie quarterback, I'm Caleb Williams. It's going to take, it's all on me, to like, they can go through this together. Same thing with Rome going into a pretty crowded receiver room.
Does it feel like the one thing that seems locked in, and I think most Bears fans' brain is DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, or Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. But the relationship that these two have makes me wonder, like, is Rome going to be the number 2 in this offense? Not to say that means somebody gets slighted majorly, right? Like, you can have multiple 1,000-yard receivers. You can have guys, but like seeing these guys early on already getting throwing in, already working, going through rookie mini camp together. They'll be going through mini camp. They'll be going through training camp. You do usually see a quarterback lock in on a guy that becomes his guy. We saw that with Justin and DJ. Do you think that there could be a Rome Odunze being higher in the depth chart than maybe we think, even with Keenan Allen on the roster this season?
I do. And I think that like there could be more clear-cut roles than at least it appears right now, because like you just think like natural, like the development curve for the two of them, they're going to come along at the same time. And we know that they've already been putting the work in. And it's not to say he hasn't been doing that with anybody else, but I just feel, you know, given the way they can use Rome Odunze as a deep threat in this offense and the speed that he has, like DJ Moore has that too, but the explosive plays that you can dedicate to Rome Odunze, that can be your security blanket. So it does feel like, I guess you'd be looking at that and you'd say, who's the odd man out? Wouldn't the natural answer, I mean, you're not going to have 3,000-yard receivers. That's not how it works. But like, you know, Rome was in a room last year with Jalen Polk, who 2,000-yard receivers in that offense. He's been on record saying he sees similarities between the way that, they could go. They had multiple receivers who were, targeted, in specific series. Like I could see that becoming the MO here, to where just naturally, given his reps and given the amount of play he's going to get, that he could be like his favorite target. Now, I'll be curious to see how the touches end up getting divvied up when, DJ Moore is coming off a career year. They didn't trade a 4th-round pick to get Keenan Allen just to have him be like an afterthought by any stretch. At the time they traded for him, did they know they were going to get Rome Odunze? No, they couldn't have possibly known that. But it's like abundance of riches, good problem to have, that you have this many talented pass catchers, and whoever is able to develop that chemistry with Caleb quicker, then that person's going to be relied upon more and probably be featured more within this offense. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's Rome Odunze, just given the path that they can put those two on, to where they can both be each other's best friends on the field, given the learning curve and the growth that they both can make at the same time.
Yeah. So the tough part is, right, you don't want anybody that had success to end up having a fall off season. But the realistic part of this is, DJ Moore, absolutely a monster. Keenan Allen, absolutely a monster. But there's a relationship already built with Rome. He's going to want to get Rome the ball. We saw that we had a version of that here, I guess, kind of right when Justin showed up. Him and Darnell hit it off really quickly. Allen Robinson was the guy who was the odd man out. You don't want it to be anyone specific, but like, the tight ends are going to be as safety blankets. You expect DeAndre Swift to get a lot of pass catches out of that backfield. It's going to have to be one of those wide receivers. Yeah. And to me, it's probably going to be the one that there are long-term questions on. Not to say you underutilize or you don't get him the ball in big moments where he can thrive, but the fact that you've got DJ Moore, who's locked up under contract, and Rome Odunze, who's going to be here for a while. I think it does leave me wondering, like, how much is Keenan Allen realistically getting used on a week-in, week-out basis?
I think that's a fair question, and it's nothing against him. It's just that, DJ Moore is already, and I know you have a new quarterback, you have a new offense. So should last year's stuff matter? Yes and no. But like, you have great options. Like, the thing that they didn't have last year was depth. And now that you have like high-end depth, like you had one guy, and then the fall off between DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney was so evident that it torpedoed what this offense was able to do. Yet DJ Moore still puts up a career year. Imagine now like spreading that production out to where Caleb Williams can be as effective targeting DJ Moore as he can be targeting Keenan Allen, as he can be targeting Rome Odunze. What it does, I think, is changes the dynamic from how many receivers are they keeping on the active roster? 5, 6? What it's going to determine more than anything else is the special teams role. So like if Velus, if he's able to, if the new kickoff rules and all those things end up like benefiting him, kind of what we heard from Richard Hightower, the the speed element, then maybe that one's his. Then like maybe number 4 is his. Then who's 5? Who's 5 on this depth chart? Is it Tyler Scott? They're probably not willing to they probably don't want to bail on that, the 4th, his 4th rounder from last year, that experiment just yet. He's young. He showed a lot of promise. There's a lot to work on. Is it Dante Pettis? Who else is it? The numbers game with this roster, because of such high-end talent that you have at the tops of every position, then makes the depth it makes it that much more difficult to figure out who's actually making the team and filling out these position rooms.
No, for sure. And I'm not going to lie. When I heard Richard Hightower talking about, bring up Velus first. He's like, the guy that could benefit is Velus Jones.
I know.
I'm like, what has he got? What does he have on you that is keeping him in this? He loves Velus. It throws me off every time because, there's so many guys that can return kicks on this team. There's so many guys. DJ Moore, if you needed him to,
sure, they were even talking about Rome Odunze doing it, which I don't believe that will happen. But
Tyreek Stevenson did it in college. Jaquan Brisker did it. There's so many guys that can return kicks on this team. Reddy Stewart, who we just signed, can return. I can't. It would be shocking to me. He's one of the guys I wonder if he is going to make this team because. Yes, he's got the kickoff rules to his advantage, but I do wonder if kickoff is enough to save you. You got to start catching some passes.
Yeah, and but here's the thing: he may not be in a spot where he's gonna with the amount of the 3 top the 3 guys who make that room so top heavy because of how talented they are and how much production they bring in. That's not going to really create many opportunities for the other guys in that room.
This is true. Hopefully we won't have to rely on Velus as our number 2 or number 3 coming into this season because of the wealth of options we have. Let me ask you this, Courtney. Appreciate you guys tuning in, showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave that 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Do want to let you guys know this episode's brought to you by the Hard Rock Casino in Northern Indiana, Las Vegas style gaming, just 30 minutes from Soldier Field, exit 6, right off of I-80 94. Excuse me. If you had to pick from everything that is now out there, because there are think pieces written about T-shirts and shorts football. Mm-hmm. What is the one thing from rookie minicamp that we can believe right now? And what is the thing that you think is being way too overblown?
I'm going to start with what's being too overblown. They had 5 draft picks. So you look at this roster and anybody who sees the guys that they signed today. So that is, let me pull it up really quick. There were 6 players that were signed on a rookie. These were guys who were undrafted free agents who were there on a tryout basis. So they weren't UDFAs that were signed already. These were people that were there as college free agents. So John Jackson, who played receiver at USC, he was there during Caleb's Heisman year. And then he played at Nevada. Leon Jones, the defensive back, Deshaun Mallory, defensive tackle. There's a linebacker, another wide receiver, another tight end. The reason I go through it so quickly is because it drives me nuts every single time we hit May and we have rookie camp when people are like, all right, who's making the roster? Let's think about this. Let's just take the defensive tackle. I don't know much about Deshaun Mallory, but let's take him for example. To figure out where you fit on that depth chart, because that's a position of need, right? That's why kind of Austin Booker is probably going to have a pretty significant role. But let's look at this. So your starters, more or less, Sweat, Billings, Dexter, and then DeMarcus Walker. Then you have your reserve level guys, Austin Booker, Zach Pickens, Dominique Robinson, who of course we've talked about, is he on the roster bubble? Probably. And then there's a bunch of other guys that they just signed. And this guy who was a college free agent, maybe he has a shot. I just want people to have more realistic expectations of anybody here that just got signed is probably set the goal of them making the practice squad first before you're thinking that this player is going to make his way onto the 53. We went through this exercise with Tyson Bagent last year. Yes, guys like him end up kind of falling through the cracks, if you want to even call it that. I don't think it was really that. I think he was a D2 guy who, outplayed his D2 status and it was found by the Bears and it was a good job of the coaching staff and the scouting department to bring him in. But it always throws me for a loop when people are like, all right, which of these guys is going to, like, from the rookie camp? Like, there's going to be a bunch of players. They have to fill out a 90-man roster for the next 4 months. A lot of those guys, majority of those guys are not making the team. But as you take a look, like, I started thinking about this the other day when I pulled up the depth chart, like, just seeing how much more difficult, like, how much more talent there is at every position. Like, if you take a look at the offensive line right now, for example, so it's, from left to right, Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Ryan Bates, Nate Davis, Darnell Wright. And then, if they keep 8 or 9 on the roster, you're picking between Kiran Amegadjie, who's on the roster, Matt Pryor, who they, signed as an undrafted free, or is it, he was signed as a free agent, Coleman Shelton, Jatari Carter, Larry Borum. Like, there's all of these names where it makes it so much more difficult to project position battles, and, like, because you're projecting, like, the 6th, 7th guy on the offensive line at this point. Like, swing tackle, like, it's a good problem to have, though, because remember there was a time when they were just trying to fill this thing out.
Yeah, the problem is 2 years ago, this was the roster. I know. Like, John Jackson's going to get some time.
Sure, and it's such a completely different day covering this team, knowing what the talent looks like and how they built it up. So I'd say that was probably the most overblown part of it. But I'll say that every year, because how much can you really take away from rookie camp other than these guys are just getting their feet wet? Like, I understand people want to, like, overreact to everything. People want to be excited. I'm not saying don't be excited. I'm just saying, like, know what you're being excited about, because there's Caleb Williams right now is in the very beginning, infancy of his NFL career. Are there things that you see, the tangible things that are, like, his traits, like processing, how quickly he's able to get rid of the ball, how the ball looks coming out of his hands? Like, those are things I think that have that come with, like, it's okay to like not overblow it, like, have that be, like, overblown, but those are okay things to have high expectations on and be like, wow, that's not just, he's not just making that throw because he's in shorts and a t-shirt right now without a pass rush in his face. Like, those are things you want to see stay consistent from beginning of May all the way through mandatory mini camp before the squad breaks for the summer. So I go back to what I saw from Caleb Williams during practices the other day, the operation part, and also, like, for him and how that ball looks coming out of his hands. Like, that is the biggest takeaway I've had, because it just looks so different from what we've seen before, and how decisive he is, where he's leading a receiver somewhere versus a receiver, like, stopping and kind of waiting for the ball to come to them.
The anticipatory throws is something that even DJ Moore talked about, is something to be excited about. That's so funny. I will say that when you talk about, like, the guys who aren't going to make the roster, I'm like, John Jackson might make this roster just on, like, is he the possible Thanasis Antetokounmpo of this team? Like, that's
an interesting one. I wanted to talk about that for a minute. So, like, I talked to him for that story I wrote on Caleb. Around, like, the Tuesday after the draft. And, I knew that they had a relationship. And I do think that it kind of plays into, that's an opportunity for him as an undrafted free agent out here on a college rookie tryout, to make the 90-man roster. Does that speak to more, like, the Bears want to make sure Caleb Williams is comfortable? This is somebody who's lived with him during the offseason. I think it was January. He moved into Caleb's place in LA. They've trained together all offseason. Is it a comfort thing, a security blanket? Maybe. They wouldn't. I'll tell people, they're not going to have the guy on the roster if he can't play football. They're going to try to find some way for him to contribute. Might there be, though, this be the way for the Bears, or, like, we want to make sure that you're comfortable, that you have, what you need to succeed. Sure. And I don't think you could fault them for it. It's not nepotism or whatever version that would be of, like, your friend having, like, pull to bring you in. That's not. I know his college stats are not great. And, like, I pulled them up this morning. It's like he finished his college career with 40 catches for 309 yards. He never caught a touchdown in college in 4 years between USC and Nevada. Are you expecting him to come in here and do something? No, probably not. But, like, they still have to fill out a roster. Like, that's what it boils down to. And we'll see. We'll see if there's something that's, like, this unlocked potential that never showed up at college, or, like, there's more to it. That's what the point of the offseason is, to give these guys an opportunity. And if it's something that makes Caleb Williams' life easier, I think the Bears have shown you they're going to go through every every part of this process, trying to check every single box. And if that ends up being one of them, then so be it. Like, I don't think you can criticize what they've done process-wise, considering how like well thought out their process has been, dating back to the time where, Will Hewlett told me he met with Shane Waldron at the Combine. And this was kind of like, this is late February. So this is kind of like laying the groundwork for, all right, if they do end up drafting Caleb, I'm working with Caleb. What are the sorts of things that you want us to work on? And I mean, hell, Caleb knew he was going number 1 then. He said he knew for 5 months. So I think that, you might not get people to be like as honest about like exactly why they're doing certain things, but you can't tell me that their process has not been very thought out and very thorough throughout this entire, last 5 months.
And listen, if it's making the quarterback comfortable,
I don't see any harm in that.
That's the goal. I don't know if people know, like, the goal is like, it's always, it always cracks me up when I hear people talk about Shane Waldron's offense. Like, he runs a very quarterback friendly offense. Like, yes, that's the goal. Like, I want my quarterback to be in friendly offense. I want him to be in friendly situations. And if bringing him all the way out to Chicago, I mean, it is a big move from the West Coast to Chicago. Yeah, you're the franchise quarterback. Yes, this is what you wanted, but make him as comfortable as possible. And if that means having, I'm not saying have him take up a 53-man roster spot.
Exactly.
Here.
I don't think that's not even the expectation. But if if the guy's good enough to make the practice squad,
there you go.
That's not a bad way to go about this by any stretch.
Yeah, I guess that will be the difference, right? This is no Thanasis Antetokounmpo because he's taking up a real roster spot. Like he's on the sidelines.
Well, not anymore for Team Greece over in. He got hurt.
I know, but how? Like, was this at practice? I still haven't seen how he got hurt. Like, was he practicing the towel swing? Was he massaging Giannis's shoulders? And then the knee went down.
Yeah,
like,
it's freak accident. Freak accident to the brother of the freak, I guess.
I was sitting there when that news came across. I literally was just like, what story are they going to come out with that's completely untrue to how he tore his ACL? This feels Carlos Boozer all the way to me. Yeah, I tripped over my luggage on the way out the door. Couple more guys just to keep going with rookie minicamp. Appreciate you guys tuning in, showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page. But some names that people want to hear about. Of course, our draft picks. People want to know what the heck is going on with some of these draft picks that we have.
Sure.
I'm sick of punter talk, but we got to talk about it because he is the punter that was drafted in the 4th round, and I heard he was shanking punts. What's going on with Tory Taylor? Is there any concern?
I don't think there's much to be concerned about. So like Saturday they were doing plus 50, so he's punting closer to the goal line. This was the first player that they signed out of this draft class. They've already parted ways with. They made the choice to go up and get Tory Taylor, knowing that Trenton Gill was going to be gone in a matter of a couple of days. And so to have any sort of concerns right now, I think that stuff would probably be a little overblown. Not saying that punting from college is going to be that much different than the NFL and, so whatever his role is. I'll be curious because we didn't see this. I asked Richard Hightower, remember last year they were doing rotating who was kicking off in preseason games between Cairo and Trenton
Gill.
So he left that door open. Maybe I just think my mind's all right, you said that this guy is a weapon. So that means if you're saying that, you have to use him in ways that might not be as conventional. But does that mean they're going to have more fake punts? We'll see. He was telling us a story about this fake punt and pass he threw to Sam Laporta at Iowa a couple of years ago. I'd have to go back and look to see the outcome of that. I know the Bears haven't done it since 2019 or 2018, but it's funny because there's so much punter talk on a position that you typically don't talk about, but because the Bears spent a 4th round pick on him, it's obviously going to up the ante on how people view him and what his role is going to be on this team. But it's rookie minicamp for him too. It's probably how I'd look at it.
Yeah, and listen, I'm of course a bit facetious. The fact that he shanked a couple of punts, and I was hearing people on Twitter, or not on Twitter, on YouTube, they were breaking down kind of what was going on at minicamp, and they were just like, now listen, we got to be better. We got to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I was like, I think he's going to get it. Like, it's punting. The ball's a little bit different, but he's going to be fine. Austin Booker is another name that has really popped up on for sure on my radar. I love Austin Booker. I loved him out of Kansas. Thought he was a heck of a player. Didn't get utilized enough. Less than 500 snaps in college. How'd Austin Booker look in his first go round at in a Bears jersey?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell his length right away. There was this like funny exchange at the end of Eric Washington, the defensive coordinator's press conference, about just like his sheer like size and length of his legs. Like his hips probably start, if I was standing next to him, they probably start like at like my ribs, because that's just like, and that's, they love these traits. That's like why they draft these guys. It's the athleticism, but it's also the build and things like length. I mean, if you have a 6'4" defensive end and you're planning on using him as a traditional 4-3 rusher, then like you want him to have that size. So size wise, it fits. Like, and I know he might be on like the slighter side right now at like 245, but you know, how he incorporates with the rest of the defensive line when they get together next week, I'm really curious to see how that works. But everybody's talking about like how raw he is. Well, I wouldn't expect a 5th round pick to be a completely polished product, would you? Like the guys like that, if he was not as raw, wouldn't he have gone like higher? And there was, you know, all this talk about if he decided to come out early, which was his choice. Had he gone higher in the draft, I don't think that he would have been, he probably isn't a Chicago Bear right now, but they were targeting him, and they're looking at a situation where they can bring somebody in who is not a finished product yet and get him with get him with a defensive coordinator, get him with Travis Smith, a defensive line coach, and put him in a situation where he can grow and develop. And you know, he's not as much of a project as other defensive ends that they've brought in here. You know, I think we've talked about Dominique Robinson from like years ago. It's a completely different situation. So I think that like some of the, you know, better things that we saw were just, you know, that explosiveness and that energy that he plays with. That was something that Eric Washington talked about. And I was like, all right, what does this look like? And, you know, just watching him kind of on reps against the sled, and like seeing him like have that same energy rep 1 versus like rep 5 or 6. And the length being an advantage that the Bears say that they want to use for an edge rusher. Like it allowed, like what he said was like, let me pull this off. He said like, you can gain ground, you can really take the grass and really force the protection mechanics against the person he's working against. So if you're trying to make this guy a technically sound player, you're going to try to develop all of those things while using his length to his advantage early on. And I'm curious to see, like, and it's hard, it's going to be hard to take away like what the rep count, like what the reps look like, but like, you know, who's he working behind? Who's he working with most closely? Are there going to be times where you're seeing Montez Sweat and him, like when they get the full squad together next week, like Sweat pulling off to like talk with him to try to show him technique? Like that's what you can really take away to figure out who's taking the coaching points and who's in line for a job. But I think he's going to have a pretty significant role here this year, considering the lack of depth that they have on the edge. And until there's a veteran addition, I think that's the only fair way to assess what the D-line looks like in Chicago.
It's so interesting. I want to say Friday, I think we did the episode Friday with Tyler Aki. EO brought up a kind of like where guys are rated offensive, defensive, rookie of the year, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Austin Booker is the 5th best odds to win defensive rookie of the year. Now, probably I don't know.
They're basing that on like to me, that would think, the logic behind him having those sorts of odds would probably be because whoever is making those the spread for that, thinking he's going to have a ton of playing time.
Yeah, and now I don't know if it's like, you know, how some of these gambling sites are. There's like 17 guys tied for the 5th best odds. They're like, we don't fucking know.
Yeah, they don't. That's half the battle right now. They don't know. None of us do.
But I do think that he'll be utilized. I think at a minimum, right? Like my hope for him in year 1 is, can you fill some of that Unique Ngakoue role if they don't bring Unique back? Mm-hmm. Can you fill the pure pass rush role? And if he's able to do that, which he was able to do in very limited time in Kansas, I think there's a word that describes Ryan Poles' 5th round picks. When I went back and looked at them, the guys that he selected to this point: Larry Borum, Dom Robinson, Braxton Jones, Terrell Smith, Noah Sewell, and then of course Austin Booker. Now, for most of those guys, I'd say serviceable.
Mm-hmm. And Borum wasn't his pick. Borum was a Pace pick.
Was Borum Pace?
Yeah, he's 2021. But you're right, serviceable.
Oh, right. Yeah. So Dom, Rob, Braxton, Terrell Smith, Noah Sewell, Austin Booker. That's right. Yeah,
and those are later round draft picks that, like, you're taking more of a flyer on those guys. But hell, Braxton Jones has been your starting left tackle.
Yep.
Noah Sewell's good in certain packages. Like, you don't have to have full starter quality for a 5th round pick. And that's something that, Eric Washington's talking about, like, what are the benchmarks for someone like in Austin Booker? Like, know the packages, know the personnel, but like know the packages and be able to execute what you need to do in various sub packages, because he's probably, if it pans out to where they can get more like veteran talent in here to, like, so he doesn't have to play right away, then he's probably a 3rd down pass rusher. Perfect that and show that you can be really good at that before, taking on a role that's, far bigger than, coming into the game situationally on obvious passing downs.
100%. Definitely need to see it. Let's finish it out here, Court. We got one player left who won't be taking any part in most of the offseason stuff, at least at this point, and that is did we get a clarification on the last name? Amegadjie. Okay, so I was right. Kiran Amegadjie. Yep. Any concern here at all? The surgery he had happened last October, I believe, and we're still at kind of a point where he's still dealing with that injury, of course, and the Bears are slow playing his return. Any concern that he's going to miss important parts of mini camp, training camp, stuff like that?
So Flus told us that the goal is getting him ready for training camp, that he's not going to be practicing this spring, and he's off working on the side. Like, there were times like when the offensive line was all together, he's taking like shadow reps like by himself. But then, like, I just kind of went back to what Trey Cozio, co-director of player personnel, said when he was drafted. He said, no, like, our staff medically cleared him, but then he's not medically cleared to practice. Like, I think that there might be a little bit of nuance in there that maybe he is truly indeed medically cleared, but they're trying to like slow play this because it is May. Again, like, he doesn't need to be up to full speed yet. But for somebody who, like, and I think if you're reading between the lines and what Poles said, because I remember asking him about this during the draft about, does he have starters potential? Like, is this somebody who's going to, push Braxton Jones for his job? And he said, not necessarily in year 1, but I don't want to put a ceiling on him. Maybe that's something that we could read into is, okay, like, very clearly they know that they're not trying to rush this guy in and set him up for failure. So I was, I guess, like a little surprised just hearing, okay, he's medically cleared, and then all of a sudden he's not out there. But I don't think that, I'm not saying anybody spoke out of turn or anything like that. I just think that maybe they're just trying to go about this in a very methodical, like, look, like, we're not going to push this until you absolutely need to give yourself, almost 9 months of healing by the time, by the time July rolls around, like when they're at training camp. And I don't necessarily know, like, he didn't seem to know, like, as far as a timeline, or at least he wouldn't say it, but he says his body feels good right now. Like, he's, it's just a matter, I think, of like making sure that you don't put yourself at any risk. So
this isn't at all a setback or anything.
This
is just
I didn't get any vibe. Process. Yeah, I think it's part of the process that they are eyeing for him.
Okay. Well, listen, he's somebody that a 3rd round pick, you would expect that you have some sort of expectations on him to try and crack this lineup. I don't know how not at some point this season, like, but I guess,
Swing
with Tevin in place,
maybe?
that's where I would think, but we'll see. The one thing I keep saying about Braxton is, and I'm not the biggest fan of Braxton, but he's overachieved for a 5th round pick. And so it's not just going to be just give this 3rd round pick Braxton Jones his job. I do like that they're kind of slow playing this because you do have somebody in place who can handle it. I love that for Rome as well. I think that's the one thing about the injuries that the Bears have. Like, the 2 guys that you look at in injuries, right? Rome with the tightness, but the 2 guys that you have, you've got vets already at that position that are locked up and good to go. So you don't feel like you have to rush anything. Courtney, any nuggets, anything before we head into next week that you got to drop on us, or is rookie minicamp pretty much just smooth sailing so far?
Well, I think since we're going to do the schedule release stuff on Wednesday night,
yeah, we will.
My prediction is that they're going to have 5 primetime games. And I told like Waddle and Sylvie this the other day, I think, and this is just like, I know the games start to slowly trickle out. Like, we'll find out who their opponent is on on like the international opponents on Wednesday. I believe it's going to be Jacksonville. I had heard that, so we'll see. But my prediction for the opener, like I'm curious to hear what everybody else thinks, is going to be like against Detroit in a primetime game, Sunday Night Football.
I would agree with you. I think that is going to be because of how the Bears played them last year. They're going to want to see that matchup kind of go out there.
Division champ, team that went to the NFC Championship. Like there's a lot of intrigue around both teams, and like both teams that are, playoff hopefuls entering the year. Is there like a limit on primetime games that you can get? I think it's 6. I think it's 6, and that like they probably don't want to give you like 6 right off the bat, so they can like flex things at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, because I'm just thinking in terms of like when Victor Wembanyama came to the NBA and we knew the Spurs were still gonna suck.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, they're going to be on ESPN almost every other night. Like they're getting a lot of like having a pick that high. People want to see that pick. People are going to flock to see that pick. And the fact that he's at USC, right? California, you're getting the California market, you're getting Chicago market. If 6 is the max, I agree with you. I think 5 is going to be kind of like
a sweet spot for a team.
And because you got to think Packers for sure. Mm-hmm. Packers is always prime time. Detroit, I would say maybe Rams, get that LA USC rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Houston for sure.
Yeah.
And then San Fran.
Maybe Arizona too. Like,
Kyler
Murray against Caleb Williams.
Kyler Murray. I really want to see that team is going to be so interesting this year. They may be the team that's the worst to first team this year. Because I'm just like, somebody can catch the ball. Like Kyler had nobody to catch the ball last year.
Good job building out that
first tight end. Appreciate you as always, Courtney. Make sure you guys are tuned in with us Wednesday night. We're going to be breaking down everything that's going on with the schedule release right after the schedule drops. So tap in with us on that. And we'll be here tomorrow with J-Mac, of course. Always ready to go. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing. Oh no, who we got tomorrow? We got Lance tomorrow.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm all flipped around. We got Lance tomorrow. We got J-Mac Wednesday. Y'all know what's coming. Stay tuned in. Chicago Bears podcast for Courtney Cronin. I'm Pat the Designer. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Peace.